welcome to the Jeff Willis Show. Today I have with me Josh Whalen. Now, Josh is the CEO and founder of Blokes.co. What's Blokes.co? We're going to get into that in a little bit, but he's been in telehealth companies which are dedicated to men's health. That's what Blokes is about. And years ago, Josh had to seek treatment for his own health problems and found himself unimpressed and dissatisfied with the industry standard. Now, using his 13 years of healthcare experience and his lifelong entrepreneurial spirit, Josh is seeking to revolutionize the future of men's health. And we're going to have a little chat today about men's health, what it's like to be an entrepreneur, and many other rabbit holes that we're going to go down into, I'm sure. So welcome to the show, Josh. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm glad to be here.
So, Josh, I'm always intrigued by the reasons behind why people want to be an entrepreneur, because it's not a bed of roses generally, but on the other side, it is a life of independence, and despite that, sometimes painful, sometimes joyful. So how did your entrepreneurial journey start?
Yeah, that's a good question. I like many others, I think, I had to get some type of foundation. My start with healthcare was with a big company. You guys have them over there too, a company called Stryker. And I was an outside sales rep. So that gave me a really good foundation understanding of running my own business. And then quickly I realized I was better at being my own boss than I was at taking orders. And I wanted to see if the grass was greener on the other side. Yep. So I took the leap. And it was probably one of the most stressful periods of my life for about 6 to 8 months, because I thought I had the plan. And like Mike Tyson says, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. My punch in the face happened to just be the real world and the relationships I thought I was taking with me to start that journey that didn't come with me, and almost started from scratch. But it's grown a lot of gray hairs. But I wouldn't change it for anything else. The money, the success, the ups and the downs. Those are what you live for as an entrepreneur. And for me, more importantly, is finding a problem and creating a solution to that problem.
Yeah, and that's where a lot of people start. And even like the likes of Uber, that was founded out of standing on a freezing street in Paris and not being able to get a taxi. And they're going, there's got to be a better way. And I think we've all been there, tried to hail a taxi, on a wet night, cold night, want to get home, and they just keep driving past because they're full up. So solving a problem is quite often the inspiration. So let's go to Blokes then, and tell us a bit about your story, or how you got to start Blokes.co.
Sure. For me, it was a personal journey. My wife in my mid-30s, I'm 40 now, for the record, told me, hey, dude, you don't get your sex drive back, we're going to get a divorce. And I went and saw primary care physicians that gave me, at that time, pretty bad guidance. I was told I was on the low side of a range, but knowing something was not connecting, I wasn't feeling the right way. And then I finally sought out a hormone specialist that dialed in exactly what I came to see them for. And then I figured out, like, that process just was cumbersome. I had to drive out of my way 45 minutes to get an appointment while getting bad advice. And I just wanted it to be a better and more streamlined process for guys, whether it's educating, whether it's accessibility. Everything that we do is at home. So it's super easy and super accessible. But it started out of my personal journey, and I saw the opportunity to make it a lot more vertical and a lot more streamlined for guys.
Yeah. So, because the issue too with guys typically is they don't take action unless someone gives them a bit of a kick in the bum. Your wife was the one who was doing that for you, and blokes can be very much not very good at looking after themselves physically, or even mentally, or just health-wise.
Right.
So, have you got to the bottom of that?
It's funny. I get this question asked a lot. Why are men reluctant to do that? And I've read more articles than I can even count on why. There's not a single consensus. There's a group consensus, and there's a multitude of factors. What I tend to trace it back is we are told at a young age as boys to toughen up and put dirt on it and just go about your business. So you extrapolate that over years, 10, 15, 20 years. And now you're in the position to make a decision on your health. It's hard to acknowledge that you're in pain. It's hard to acknowledge that your sex drive is off. It's hard to acknowledge that maybe you do have brain fog. And sometimes the best way to acknowledge that is the people around you. And I often give the example of my scenario. It was like living with a partner who snores. The only person that really suffers when somebody is snoring is the other person who's trying to sleep. It's never the person that's snoring. So my wife in that instance was the person that was suffering on a relationship. I wasn't addressing their needs. I didn't understand their needs, nor did I even understand that I was having those issues. So when you come full circle on guys getting help, whether it's mental help, whether it's physical help, whether it's spiritual help, they're reluctant to ask that because I think they've been rooted with that for years and years, and it's hard to change when it's been embedded in their mind.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So I think, it's like you said, toughen up. Big boys don't cry. All that stuff. The glib cliches that we, as boys and emerging men, are quite often told.
Yep.
So tell us a bit about testosterone therapy, because it's a bit of a black hole in a sense, isn't it? It's like I've done some reading on it recently, and it's just all over the place. So tell us a bit about what you discovered along the way in terms of your own journey with this, and how you treat, I suppose, hormone issues is really what you're talking about, isn't it?
Yeah, you bet. There's two camps. There's the testosterone as a steroid, right? The old school thought of the bodybuilder, the meathead, and the guy that's just doing anything to get that edge. That is not how we practice. We focus on replacement, and there's a big difference there. We feel that guys and women should be in an optimal range, meaning all we're doing, if you're suffering from a symptomatic perspective and the blood markers match that, we're trying to replace what we think is there. So all we're doing is giving a dose to get you to an optimal level. And you're right. I think there needs to be a lot of education. I think there's an old school thought that testosterone is bad. But when you actually start peeking under the hood, testosterone is a really good thing. Optimal testosterone is a really good thing. What's really bad for the human body is when you have low testosterone ranges or too high of testosterone ranges. Testosterone is a really, really good marker for inflammation. And if you think about that and you break down so many disease states that can live and thrive in inflammation, whether it's gut, whether it's joint, arthritis, for example, gut health. If you have optimal testosterone levels, and that's a really key marker for inflammation, and you can maintain that, that's a really good thing for longevity. It's a really good thing for vitality. And that's how we approach the business.
Yeah, so basically trying to dispel the myths. So you must be doing a lot of education. Is that part of what you do in terms of your marketing?
Yeah, you bet. I think there's a lot of guys when you start hitting a certain age group, right? Studies show anywhere between 30 and 35, your cellular activity just starts to change. The aging process starts to actually take place. And when you start hitting those ages, the only place that growth hormone testosterone is going to go is down, right? And it's proven. This is a scientific fact. So as that aging process starts, guys start to become more intrigued because their biological clock per se is starting to tick. But they don't know why. And it is our goal and our marketing. It's our goal in our one-on-one sessions to really educate the patient, understand why they're there, and understand what their goals are and what they're trying to solve.
So you got the idea, saying, I need to solve this problem. And quite often entrepreneurs discover that process and systems are actually pretty important.
Yeah.
But a lot of entrepreneurs, we run away from that because it's attention to detail. The entrepreneur is typically a bigger picture. Here's the problem, I want to solve it, save the world for that particular problem, maybe. Sorry. And so you would have had to put a few pieces in place here to create a system to help
Mhm.
blokes. Tell us a bit about those pieces that you initially put together after the big idea.
You nailed it. At least for me as an entrepreneur, I think there are really gifted entrepreneurs like Elon Musk who can have the big idea, but then have all the intricate details in between. I'm a big thinker, and putting those pieces together are still happening. We're still optimizing our process every day. I think one thing that I took for granted is how important the process was.
Mm.
And you know, you start hearing words like user experience and flow and timelines and speed to appointments. Those are equally as important as the actual idea, if not more important. And now, you know, if anything, we're constantly analyzing the process. And where does that patient journey start? Does it start at a podcast? Does it start at a Google ad? Does it start at a Facebook ad? And then what does that journey look like by the time they're actually getting their prescription? And everything in there, that meat, it's not sexy. I call it the blocking and tackling of the business, has to work more efficiently than any other part of the business, in my opinion, because it's not just getting the prescription in the hand, it's how it got to that person. So we're dialing it in as we speak. I think what's really fun is we're putting together a pitch deck to go raise money, and we're going to be putting a lot of that blocking and tackling in place now that we know we have a concept, now that we know that we're solving some issues. You know, I'm a big thinker guy, but I got to hire the right people to solve those issues.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the challenges of a lot of businesses is generating leads. So you're trying to solve a problem. So what are some of your tactics that you are currently using to generate leads for your business? Is there a bunch of tactics, content? What's lead generation look like for blokes.co?
Yeah. You know, I'm a big believer in not putting your eggs in one basket. And I think you have to hit consumers in many, many different ways. I am the best advertisement because I'm a walking billboard. If I'm sitting at a bar with a guy, I'm going to tell him what I do, why I do it, how I did it. I think word of mouth starts there. For us, it's getting the message across in formats like this, because there is so much educating when it comes to hormone optimization. So podcast has been a good way for us to start educating, creating content, reposting that content. But then, you know, for us, since we're virtual, we have to look at, you know, what are the best means to get patient acquisition. Google ads have been extremely important for us at the top of that funnel. Then we look at retargeting mechanisms such as Instagram, Facebook, which they've gotten pretty tough when it comes to hormone optimization, which is healthcare in general. But there's ways around that. And then just building our own content, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's Instagram, whether it's Facebook, just building value and constantly educating the patient and building value and building that trust with the patient. Because, you know, what we see is guys, for example, are pretty slow consumers. And they're not usually the greatest consumer when it comes to response, but it can take anywhere from 6 to 8 different touches before they're ready to even take an action. Women are a lot more responsive in that facet.
Okay, yeah, it's interesting. So tell us a bit about how the process works. If a bloke says, oh, look, I've got a problem, puts up his hand. So the sales process for you got the lead, and I just want to understand. So blokes know what they'd expect from a service from you guys to help them with their health.
Yeah.
And also, as we know, getting rid of brain fog and having energy is important to be, as an entrepreneur. So you need to be on top of your game. Tell us a bit about the process and getting solving the problem for the patient. The bloke.
Yeah, the how it works is easy. We've actually dabbled with this process, and we're, like I said earlier, we're still evolving. One thing that we have realized in our process is too much automation is usually not enough for the patient to feel good about it. Not enough automation in a virtual world also drives the patient away. So we're trying to blend and marry those two. So the process is simple. Start with an online consult, fill out basic demographics, sign off on some informed consent, some health history, just your standard health stuff. My team immediately calls you within that hour. We get you on the books, depending on whether you need a lab or not. We'll get you on the books with one of our clinical providers, an MD, a DO, a nurse practitioner, or a PA. And then after that happens, we are then able to ship you medications. If you're a diligent consumer, if you're a diligent patient, that process can be as quick as a week. If you're a little bit more methodical, it can be anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks before you actually have the medication in hand. But we try to combine a little bit of automation and then a lot of service.
Cool. You operate in some challenges I think can come to mind for me is that you operate in a fairly regulated market, medical.
Yep.
So what are some of the challenges been in that space for you guys?
Yeah, I think healthcare, especially in the wake of COVID, is a really tough market to navigate. I wouldn't advise a new entrepreneur who's never been in it to do it unless you have a huge capital backing. But for us, we deal with a lot of governing bodies. We deal with the Attorney General of each state, for example. We deal with the FDA. We deal with the FTC. We deal with state pharmacy boards. And, I will tell anybody looking at this business to make sure they're doing their diligence when it comes to legal requirements. You got to have a good attorney. You got to almost have one on standby or flash dial. But knowing what you're getting into before you start crossing state lines. And we live in this really unique market of being a virtual healthcare provider. It's evolving. People think it's there, but there's a lot of states that are very friendly towards it. And especially when you deal with testosterone, because it's a controlled substance. And there's a lot of states that you just can't do it. And doing that diligence and understanding the legal landscape is extremely important in any business, but in particular healthcare.
Yeah. So the other challenge too is America's health and medical system is very much state driven. Is that correct?
So you have two. Well, you have a few different bodies, right? You have the FDA, which is a federal governing body.
Yep.
Then you have state pharmacy boards, which each state has their own pharmacy board, and they can essentially say yes or no to any therapy, any product. And then you have, once you start crossing state lines, you have the FTC. So there's a collective effort, and then last and certainly not least, I don't even think I mentioned this, was the DEA, which is a federal governing process. But each state also has certain DEA requirements as well. So there's a lot of hoops that you start jumping through. And if you don't have a good understanding of it, and if you don't have a honeypot sitting there to throw at legal, you probably should reconsider your venture, because it's one of those that you want to be legally buttoned up.
Yeah. So based upon your experience in the healthcare industry over the last 13 odd years, obviously you've got the experience and used to navigating this. Is that correct?
Yeah, true. And I've been fortunate to be in many different facets of healthcare, to where a lot of this diligence has been done, but a lot of it hasn't. And you got to dot the I's and cross the T's. And virtual health is somewhat new to me. And, so learning those pathways is still different, but they're also evolving. Coming off the wake of COVID, I feel like every state is changing how they're regulating telehealth practices throughout the country. And it's important to stay in tune with those.
Yeah. So, obviously you must be, if you're providing a health solution, you said you've mentioned using partners. In other words, that helps you scale. You don't need to teach them internally necessarily, but except for processes and systems maybe. But so what are some of the partners you use to provide you with the resources you need to help blokes?
Yeah. I mean, there are a few key things that we need to do. We need to incorporate. One is labs. If you're not incorporating diagnostic labs with the likes of LabCorp or Quest or local labs that you can maybe do at-home testing, then you're doing a disservice to your patient. And to me, it's malpractice. The other piece is compounding pharmacies, and compounding pharmacies play a huge role in how we prescribe, a huge role in the products that we can get patients, the sterility of the actual products, the longevity of the products, and just the safety profile. So if you're not incorporating those, then you're probably not running a sound sound or good practice in this space, and they're crucial. They're absolutely crucial to the the soundness of our practice.
So the initial interview, is that done by a medical professional?
You got it. Yeah. So we work with MDs, DOs, nurse practitioners, and PAs, and a lot of it depends on where that patient is located. A lot of it depends on where that license holder is located, and where their license is. In the States, as most know, you can't practice over state lines unless you have a medical license, unless you have a DEA license. So there's a lot of regulatory aspect there. There's a lot of admin and accounting there. But depending on where that patient resides is who we typically will match you with. But everybody that we work with is certified in A4M, which is a big governing body when it comes to hormone optimization and prescription peptides. Been doing hormone optimization for years. Amongst our team, we have somewhere around 80 odd years or so just in hormone optimization, which has become such a specialized field over the last 10 years.
Yeah. So basically what you're saying is don't start a business like this without a net.
Let me tell you this. I have bootstrapped this thing from day one, and there's a reason why we're going to raise money. And we are well into six figures in this business, and there's definitely light at the end of the tunnel. We're hitting really good stride with our marketing, with our content, with our flow and our process, but it's taken a lot of months, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears and hours to really dive into that and understand it. And so yeah, in short, I would tell you, have a nice safety net.
Yeah, I totally get that. So the other thing, and look, even though I'm from Australia, I have been to America a lot and read a fair bit about healthcare and so on. Now, healthcare in America can be incredibly expensive, and typically you don't get health insurance unless you've got a job.
Right.
So, in terms of your target market, how do you deal with that? In terms of, are you dealing with blokes who have health insurance and can afford it? Is there challenges with price points and budgets? Tell us a bit about that area, because that's a thing that's sort of come up in my mind about potential challenges for Blokes.co.
Yeah, I there's a huge shift right now in the US, and a lot of that is concierge medicine. A lot of it is elective style therapies. We fall into that category, meaning we don't take insurance. Fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to look at it, a lot of what we do is not even covered by insurance.
Yes.
Testosterone replacement therapy is if it's covered, it's a rare thing. And if it is covered, it's because of a really odd or horrible condition such as cancer. So when we look at our target consumer, yeah, we do have an ideal person, but that person could have insurance, doesn't have to have insurance. Our ideal customer is really when they start hitting that age mark, call it that mid 30s to 65, when they started noticing that their body has changed.
Yep.
And we do our best to keep the prices reasonable. I mean, our TRT plan is $149 a month, and that includes all your labs, all your consults. We do anywhere from 5 to 8 labs on every patient in an annual period. And that usually comes with anywhere from 4 to 8 concierge style visits. So it's still rather affordable. I mean, it's a night out to dinner or a night out with the boys. So you have to prioritize, but then it can really scale from there. Let's say you're the ultimate biohacker. You're the Ben Greenfield of the world, and you want to start stacking testosterone replacement with multiple peptides. You can quickly run up to anywhere from $800 to $1,500 a month.
Right. So you're essentially you're providing this as a sort of monthly subscription service?
You got it. So some of our therapies are monthly, and then some of them are standalones. And it just depends on the patient, depends on their goals, it depends on where their symptoms are. We look at hormone optimization, testosterone replacement as a subscription, something that once you're on it, you're likely going to want to stay on it. Not that you have to stay on it, but you're going to likely want to stay on it because the benefits are so They're so clear, and patients do really well with it under medical supervision. But some of our peptides, for example, let's say BPC 157, which is for inflammation, gut health. A lot of patients will cycle on that for 8 weeks, and then they'll cycle off it for 8 weeks. It just depends on the patient.
Right. So essentially, I'm just thinking of a possible acronym for blokes. Is what you're doing is it's testosterone as a service or health as a service.
Yep.
In other words, a TAS or a HAS.
Yep.
And also the other thing too is the multiples in terms of exit and valuations when it comes to raising money. Because
Sure.
subscription now has become almost embedded, woven into almost every entrepreneur and startup.
Right.
In other words, the subscription model has become quite useful. Has that been an important part of your business modeling?
Yeah, absolutely. The way we looked at it is the subscription model is key for longevity and overall ROI. And it's also a great way to land and expand into other therapies. A lot of guys just come in and say, you know what, I'm a hormone optimization guy. So he's our perfect subscription, but through education and clinical feedback and building a relationship, then we can start expanding on the peptide therapy. The other side of it is we wanted a subscription component, but we also didn't want to neglect the people who were not really ready to go all in on the subscription. So we try to educate, we try to build rapport with the patient. So we kind of run a hybrid model, but it's absolutely an important aspect as we go to look to raise money.
Yeah. Yeah, because I've been involved with a startup for the last 10 years. I still call it a startup, but raised about, I think, 25 million so far. But now we've
Wow,
got
congrats.
260 staff. So it's a company called Shuttle, which I've been involved with, which originally came out of content marketing and social media back in 10, 11 years ago. But they've developed a business model, which is creative as a service. So in other words,
Interesting.
yeah, so it's actually using a mix of people skills, creative skills, plus technical to scale. So it's a hybrid model, but it's creative as a service to create video ads from static images, which is what Shutterrock does. So so it's really interesting to hear your model, which is a hybrid by the sounds of it, which is interesting. So I have had some experience with going from just a business that moves to another as it evolves its model, because the reality is that in starting a business, you think you've got the audience nailed, you think you've got the product nailed, and then, as you said about Mike Tyson, suddenly you discover that the plan you had is just not working.
We feel like we tweak the system and the process all too often. What I have learned in a short amount of time is it's important as we go to raise, as we forecast, to own as much of this process as possible.
Oh yeah.
And that means, whether or not we get into the laboratory game is one thing, but getting into the pharmacy game is definitely going to be part of that forecast. And being able to control the supply and the demand and the distribution, the packaging, soup to nuts, the service is so imperative. And, it took about 3 or 4 months for us to realize that, but it's definitely going to be part of the raise.
Yeah. Yeah, and the challenge is that you are going to outsource everything as much as possible so you actually can afford without going to huge capital raising before
Exactly.
you actually bring it in house. And that's always the challenge, isn't it? So like, okay, so let's get partners we can work with, but then over time to get control of quality and process and systems, is you do need to bring a certain essential elements in house, and when to do that becomes a challenge, doesn't it?
It is tough, and the harder piece is can you make money on both sides of it, and you can make more money by bringing it in house, but then you have a staff, you have heating, you have cooling, you have rent, you have different product supply, so can we house our own pharmacy? Do we have enough supply there? I think we do. I think we will eventually, especially when we increase the marketing budget. But yeah, it's you definitely got to weigh those options. But I do know that's where we're going.
Okay. Well, because that'll give you as much control as possible for you to scale.
Yeah, and I think it gives us more tentacles too. Not only do we have to service ourselves, perhaps we can service, it's pretty compelling to have a compounding pharmacy that's licensed in all 50 states that can ship to all 50 states. Perhaps we roll out our own white labeling system, maybe within our space, maybe indirect competitors. But the virtual health market is to me, it's pretty unlimited. Owning the pharmacy then opens up quite a bit. It also opens up quite a bit in our portfolio. I'm looking at TRT and hormone optimization and peptide therapy as kind of the intro, but there's so many other things that we can expand on. ED medications, ADHD, anti-anxiety, depression. There's a lot of things in men's health that we're not tapping into, and it will make a lot of sense if we're running that process soup to nuts.
Yeah. The other challenge too is, well, the opportunity and challenge is that a lot of medical services are essentially legacy services. And I still believe, and it happens in Australia, is that doctors still communicate quite often with a fax machine, which are now in museums.
Well, let me tell you this: we still have to send fax to pharmacies, and it's an e-fax, but it's still a fax.
Yeah, exactly. And then referrals. Okay, here's the other thing. So specialists will not see you unless there's a referral from a GP.
Right.
And a recent experience with my partner, she had a little checkup, specialist on her hand. She forgot to take her printed page written hand note to the specialist, so I had to go around and get it scanned and emailed to the specialist. Otherwise, they would have sent her home, or she would have come home. But you're just going, hang on, isn't it 2022? It's like, my God, isn't there a better way? And I'm sure that's part of your opportunity for you guys as well, is you're going, let's drag some of these health opportunity niches into the 21st century.
Right.
So that we actually can solve problems faster and better and cheaper.
Right.
Is that part of your thinking as well?
Absolutely. I look at healthcare in America, at least, in two different buckets. One is insurance, and then one is elective. And to me, I think where it's going is allowing the patient to control that process or to own that process. If I have a cold sore on my lip, I shouldn't have to go to my primary care doc to then go to the pharmacy or then be referred to somebody who specializes in a cold sore, right? Yeah. When you have an injury or you have an ailment, and if we can be that first point from an elective perspective, it may not allow insurance, but if we can keep the pricing competitive, most patients are going to go for ease of access.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think that part of the challenge, I think, in healthcare is the friction involved in getting shit done.
Yeah.
You've got to jump through quite a few hoops. You've got to drive, like you were driving 45 minutes to get to visit a doctor. So is part of what you're trying to do is actually to remove the friction to make sure that people can look after their health better, make it easier.
Absolutely.
Simpler.
Yeah, I mean, I look at my process, and I think at the end of the day, we're all patients, right? Even the doctor at some point is a patient. We've all been in long, boring, stale waiting rooms. We've all been on hold for 30, 45 minutes to schedule an appointment. We've all battled an insurance bill that was incorrect, or they missed my spelling and, they didn't bill my insurance. We've all been there. And if you can remove that friction, that proverbial friction as a patient, healthcare then becomes like other markets. I mean, the healthcare gets a bad rap and a bad stigma because of all that process-oriented stuff that is friction. If you can remove that, and if we could be the catalyst to do that, are known in men's health that we're the frictionless company, imagine how many people are going to come to us.
I think as we've had this chat, I can see the opportunities for you guys if you get this right.
Yep.
Definitely. So tell me a little bit about peptides. I'm not an expert in peptides because I just never done much about peptides.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
what's a peptide, and tell us a bit more about what the
Sure.
implications are for men.
Yeah, I mean, peptides are important. Peptides are like hormones, right? They're flowing through our body naturally. We have, somewhere around 7,000 peptides that are flowing through our body. Most common peptide that people are not aware of is insulin. Your body can't live without it. Obviously, type 1 and type 2 diabetes, and it's been prescribed for, 50, 60, 70 years. There are about 50 FDA approved peptides right now in existence, constantly evolving, constantly studying them. We focus on peptides that range from weight loss to hair loss to sexual function to growth hormone, anti-aging. They're phenomenal things. They're chains of amino acids. And there's basically the stepping stones of proteins. So you have peptides, you have polypeptides, and then you have proteins. And they're really fun and exciting space that I think first of all, it's been around for years, but I think we're still studying and evolving. The nice thing about peptides when you take them as a patient is you're not shutting off that natural production. You're only encouraging more of that natural production.
Right. So, and because you're really trying with peptides, you're trying to solve two initial problems, aren't you? One is testosterone therapy, and the other one is weight loss as well. Yep. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I look at peptides, and testosterone falls under hormones, and then peptides are in its own individual category. And one of the unique things about peptides is they can do really specific things really, really well. And there's a really big buzz in the healthcare community with a weight loss prescription peptide. It's called a GLP-1 medication. It's glucagon-like peptide. The big name that everybody's throwing around is called semaglutide. And what that does is it slows down the digestive tract while decreasing the appetite and craving. So it's a phenomenal peptide. It's FDA approved. Most patients over a 6 month to an annual period are losing anywhere from 10 to 20% of their body weight.
Right. Okay. Yeah. A weight issue has never been a problem for me, so I sort of don't get it. I'm actually maybe more towards not eating than eating too much.
and you know what? There are peptides to stimulate that as well.
Yeah. So I've never had a weight problem per se, really. And I sort of look at people going, "Oh, you got a weight problem? Look, get over it, man. Fix it. Stop eating, or just what you're eating. Get out and exercise." But I'm operating from a different, perspective.
Well, it's a good perspective. You're lucky to have it, right?
Oh, yeah.
And people are not even aware that your body has hunger hormones, satiety hormones that also play a factor in your weight. And here in the United States, you're probably aware of it. We have a 42% obesity population. So we have a chronic issue in the United States that needs to be addressed. And as you're aware, if you're obese, there's a lot of other comorbidities that typically come with that. Diabetes, asthma, you're not working out. So your metabolic rate is just screwed up to the roof. And, it's definitely shortening life. So I think it's a really good thing that we're trying to get a pulse on. And these GLP-1 medications are really showing a lot of promise in the space.
Yeah. And that's what blows me away all the time is the use of the evolution and rapid evolution of technology, including medical technology and treatments. That is just mind-boggling what's going on. Because now we've got the computing power to crunch data, test faster, just like what happened with COVID. We had vaccines out within 12 months? 9 months?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's pretty exciting times in terms of health, but you got to look. But you still have to take the peptide. You've got to take the hormone. You've got to take the drug. And the other thing I think we get around, and certainly I struggle with a little bit, is, well, if I'm taking a drug, I'm not actually healthy because I'm
Sure.
supplementing.
Yeah.
Whereas modern life's got its own challenges. So it's as you guys as a health company, you're fighting many, I suppose, paradigms and ways of living and challenges that you've got to overcome in your marketing as well. So, yeah,
Yeah, it's a good point. We get a lot of um, naysayers that are not willing to say, I'm going to go that route because I feel like I'm giving up, right?
yep,
Um, our best patient is the patient that's ready to make change, regardless of their income, regardless of who they are. And that means they're ready to make change in their lifestyle. They're ready to live a healthier lifestyle. I don't care what drug you're injecting in anybody. I don't care what pill you're taking. I don't care what supplement you're taking. If you're not willing to make those changes, you're likely not going to see the results or the success that you want. So even though we are prescribing medications to help with that, what we tell people is we're just going to get you to that finish line a lot quicker, but only if you follow the protocol, only if you follow the program, and only if you're ready to make change.
yeah. I think the wonderful opportunity in the area you're in is there's a lot of pain,
Yep.
and actually, pain often is a much more powerful motivation than pleasure. Um, so if you've got a medical problem and you're in a lot of pain, or you're about, you've been told you're going to die unless you do this. There's a little
Yep.
bit of motivation, which is good. In other words, you're addressing big problems, and overcoming big issues and big problems. So it's great. Um, so what do you see the biggest challenges for you going forward? It sounds like you've identified one of them, which is getting venture capital so you can scale this
Mm-hmm.
baby. Um, what else is some of the challenges that you see for you to get this to fly?
Yeah, I think our biggest one is capital. Marketing dollars are real, and infrastructure is real money. Yeah, I think indirect issues is where healthcare stands in a year or 2 years post COVID with telehealth. We don't really know where it's going to stand. We think we have an idea, but we work in the world. Testosterone is considered a controlled substance, and in my opinion, for some good reasons, some bad reasons. But that puts us in a completely different category. You never know what the FDA is going to do. You never know what the DEA is going to do in terms of those. So for us, it's having a full bag, a full portfolio of options that we can offer our patients, and really diversifying how we get to the customer. So I think that's our biggest thing. Obviously, there's competition. I like to say, if I'm in the trench with any other founder or CEO, I'm going to outwork them. I'm going to outclimb them. This is why I do this. I believe in our mission. I'm fortunate enough to be in the trenches as a patient as well. So I truly believe in what we're doing. But other than that, I think we have a really good business plan. I think we have a really good objective. I know the therapies that we're offering work, and I can stand behind that, which is a really remarkable thing. But I think our biggest issue right now is growing sustainably and going to raise money. I mean, we're let's see, we're in month 8 of seeing patients, and we almost broke even on our monthly costs last month, which is, for us, I think it's a win. And
Yep.
each month we're seeing double-digit growth. We're seeing more and more word of mouth. We're seeing more of our SEO and our blogs and our content start to take shape. If anything, right now, we can't keep up with the growth across state lines because of licensure with a lot of our providers. So, I mean, if we get 10 solid leads in a day, or 20 in a day, 10 of them are coming from states that we're not even licensed in. So the blocking and tackling on the content and the marketing, it's starting to pick up, and we're starting to see our natural SEO go up. So it's really good things happening.
Mm. Yeah, well, it's great to hear that you're getting that traction, which is fantastic. So, just as a finishing note, what's to other entrepreneurs or wannabe entrepreneurs, people that want to get are already in the trenches, What's some of your top tips, or a top tip that you think is really important in terms of succeeding as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I'm a big believer on owning that journey, regardless of what it is. Doing the diligence before you get there. And I went to this networking event called Baby Bathwater about 3 weeks ago, and I didn't really know what my intent was or what my goal was. Part of my goal was to just know that other entrepreneurs are struggling and other founders are struggling, and know that that journey is real, because life isn't Instagram, life isn't Facebook. You sure as hell ain't seeing the downs of a business. You're only seeing the ups on those channels. So to me, it's just sticking to the mission. Always stick to that mission. Always know that if you're doing that, you're likely solving a problem.
Right. So it sounds to me like you're playing the long game.
We're trying to. I'm getting more and more gray hairs, but fortunately, I have hormone optimization and peptide therapy to keep up with my lifestyle.
Well, mate, you've still got your wife. You're still looking healthy, and you obviously are curious about what you're doing, driven by a personal story. And I think that is a pretty motivating place to start. So, looking forward to hearing more about your journey as we keep in touch.
Absolutely.
So, thanks, Josh, for your time. It's an absolute pleasure. And how do people contact you and the company?
Sure.
What's the best way to contact you?
Yeah, I mean, best way is blokes.co. It's super easy. BLOKES.co. We have a great Instagram page with lots of content. It's at Get Blokes. And if anybody reaches out through those channels, if they're looking for me, they can easily get a hold of me. My email is my first name at blokes.co. I'd be happy to talk to anybody about my journey, their journey, and just give them, the good, bad, and the ugly per se of this space, and making the right decisions from the onset.
Yeah. Well, congratulate you on stepping into the unknown, and I understand what that looks like. And thank you very much for sharing your story. And look forward to catching up maybe in Denver.
Absolutely.
For a beer, or maybe pop a testosterone pill. I don't know.
Hey, we got you covered on both. So.
Okay, mate. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. Cheers, Jeff.